This is a presentation about the design considerations for engineering asset management systems. So a little bit of background to what we've actually done in the first place. We've been basically pondering with the idea of understanding how standardization of asset management design and how the real world compare to each other. So we've been looking at different papers from the this slide now changed. So from the Institute of Asset Management, there's asset management autonomy, which defines how asset management should be designed and strategically aligned to the strategy of the company, and hence it gives an insight of a standard of how asset management systems should be designed in the first place. So what we wanted to do was we want to go out into the different companies and different organizations. We wanted to try and understand in detail how this theoretical publication or the standard from the Institute compares to the real world. And there were a couple of things that we've realized. So first of all, normally what happens is design of an asset management system not very often happens from top down, but more from bottom up. So mostly companies already have some form of asset management system, and they're looking at a redesign of this system rather than actually going into a complete redesign or reorganization of the system in itself. So and the second thing is that obviously now in today's world, asset management is usually done by very many organizations. So it's more of an integration, or how we refer to it, an ecosystem of multiple organizations that actually do asset management or provide services around asset management to one or to multiple organizations. Hence, it's very much an integrated world. We've basically found by the organizations that we've looked at that this was not very much reflected within how they actually look at design. So what companies have we looked at? We've looked at companies with a background of aviation, facility management, so quite a large organization and its facility management, a utilities company, heavy equipment companies, or companies that run quarries and run building site, consultancies, and different other companies. So the interviews that we've run, we've tried to basically understand what their asset management practices are, the process they're using for designing an asset management system from a IT point of view, but as well, or quite stronger from a management point of view, and how they see a process to improving the asset management system. So do they actually sit down once a year, for example, and try and have a meeting around how they can improve things, or is that like kind of a continuous effort and so on? And then we've basically looked at whether people see shortcomings of these processes, or then as well ask probing questions around how we see the world around asset management and its implications. All the interviews followed a similar structured approach, means that we had a couple of questions which we wanted to basically talk to people about, and went through these to understand exactly what people were saying. So what I'd like to basically give a reflection of the now published executive briefing, key considerations of asset management. So the paper basically discusses 6 areas, and I would like to go into these and discuss these six different areas in the following slides. So the organizations see the asset management systems, first of all, as an outcome of a design effort, but normally what happens is these systems evolve over a couple of years, and there is some form of impacts, or like kind of some form of aspects that kind of feature this design or like kind of push this design. So this may be external, so hence customer requirements, for example. This may be some form of internal structure, so organizational strategies, or then market forces. So, for example, competition or quite strong in certain fields. So, airline industries, for example, is regulations. Pretty much all of the companies said that they are continuously looking to improve their asset management systems, so hence making more use out of their assets. But none of the organizations actually had a very strong structure around how they would be actually improving those. So, for example, a structured meeting per year or per quarter where they would be discussing how to actually improve the system. This is of course interesting because there's a lot of money to be saved and to be saved within the organizations. So next, I would like to go into these 6 aspects. First aspect that we found is risk and scenario analysis. So first of all, what does that mean? So it basically means that you would like to design a system, and then afterwards you would do some form of test, or like you would verify that the system is actually working. So risk and scenario analysis means that you think about certain risks that may be coming out of the market, out of your environment, and then you build a scenario around it, and you test your system, or you see if your system can actually handle these scenarios. So in the literature, this is seen as something that is very, very important, and we do acknowledge as well from a research point of view that this is important. However, in practice, this is normally quite strongly neglected. So there's not very many organizations that actually do that. This does not hold true for the heavily regulated industries. So, for example, for airlines or airline fleet management. One thing that was quite interesting was that risk and scenario analysis, of course, comes very, very strongly into aspect when an economic downturn is the case. So when the interviews that we did were still the interview times now is about 1.5 years ago. So basically, during the time, it was still considered downturn. So most of the equipment that was used was people try to retire equipment as late as possible. People try to stretch the use of equipment, and it showed within many of the organizations that there was no scenario analysis or kind of risk within the company that would actually allow their asset management system to handle these situations. So whereas in the planning of a system or of a managerial structure, to ask yourself beforehand the question what happens and how to actually handle an economic downturn and what the impacts would be, would then have had then a positive impact later on for the organization within the economic downturn. Very, very much similar. And now the market picks up again, so hence certain decisions have to be made which assets are now being retired and replaced. So similar to that, there's not very strong scenario analysis in these areas. So the second part was when we are talking about asset management normally, and many of the organizations talking about mass asset management as well, they talk very much about providers and external organizations who help to maintain assets, to service assets, and but there's no standardized interfaces usually being defined. So the organizations themselves neglect quite a lot how they actually organize communication between external partners and internal partners. This is as well from an IT point of view, but this is as well from a managerial point of view. So there's not, for example, a standardized communication template on how to actually communicate that an asset needs to be serviced or something like this. This aspect of standardizing interfaces, however, on an IT from an IT point of view, but as well from a managerial point of view, is quite neglected in the academic literature as well. So this maybe is a lot of reflection from from the wider field. So the third aspect that we've been identifying where we see the need to interact is the definition of KPIs and performance measures for the servicing of asset management systems. So we found that within most organizations, and I'm going to take one example, the organizations take a very, very short-term view on the use of assets in generics, and the asset management, the use of the asset or the ideal use of the asset is normally not set under KPIs by the whole of the organization. So one example, and I'm going to illustrate that with another point later on, is where we interviewed a quarry manager. And the quarry manager had 1 to 2 machines on the site, usually, that was fully working. He would not share this with the whole of the organization, so the organization as a whole would have multiple quarries underneath itself. But he would not share this with other quarry managers, because obviously if one of his machines would break down, his argumentation would be, I don't get incentivized to actually share this, I get incentivized on making sure that my quarry actually has the biggest production and best use of its production. So he would be keeping a machine back, which could be basically helping the whole of the organization to perform better in itself. This was pretty much down to local KPIs of this single quarry manager. So this is one example which shows that that there's sometimes a problem with KPIs and performance measures. So point number 4 is the end value of the value chain. So within asset management, obviously, to understand what the end value is, so hence what the asset in itself is, where the asset in itself is bound in to be in a production process, is very, very important. So one example that we're using at the moment is the example of a logger. So like it's a machine that helps in logging season to log wood, and the logging season is normally maybe 1 or 2 months. So if logging season is halfway through, then the value within asset management would be to basically use a piece of string and a couple of screws and make the logger work again, because it's very, very important that this logger works. And then after logging season, the machine can go into a massive overhaul pretty much for 2 months. It doesn't really matter because logging season is over. Hence, the value of this asset is pretty much done. So this value of assets, so for example, high availability as a means of a value of an asset, would be not very much known throughout organizations. So an example was where within a power company, pretty much simple maintenance tasks would be done within high production times. So this to the point number 4. Point number 5 is the alignment and value distribution of performance measures. So this goes back to the example that I took for point number 3. So there's no indication of KPIs throughout all the organizations where the value is actually end focused. So we've just discussed what value end focus is with the example of a logger and logging season. And basically, normally within many of the organizations, there seem to not really be a KPI to contribute to the overall goals of or value goals of the organization. So hence, so to say, an umbrella KPI where people would be contributing, and then would be able to contribute by an example, taking and helping the whole of the organization. Number 6 is the changing of customer needs. So we found that asset management systems have normally not been designed to include the changing of customer needs. So if a strategy change of a customer, so hence, for example, within the provision of an ecosystem, and the customer would like to change its business model, then normally the asset management systems would not be ready for this. We obviously see this as something very important because the business models of companies, specifically at the moment in time, are changing to make the strategies future-proof. So asset management systems have to obviously try and keep up with these changes of customers' business models. This as well feeds a little bit into point 1, where risk and scenario analysis would obviously be helping to understand how a change of a customer need would actually have an infliction or give problems within the asset management system. So very brief as a conclusion, so we've discussed that in many organizations there's no structured methodology to change asset management systems or to build those from scratch. Mostly organizations thrive to improve the asset management system, but they thrive to improve the existing system. Risk and scenario analysis are seen as useful. There has to be an effort to look into the standardization of asset management systems interfaces. It's considered as positive to look into KPIs and performance measures of asset management systems, as well as to improve the transparency of end value to the customer, and to have an efficient change management capability within the asset management system or within the management structures when it comes to changing customer requirements.